just to let you know, it's a great discussion happening in here with Chad Landman again. I think most of you were, but just in case this is your first night or you're just joining us, this is night 2 of 3 of Chad's active digital parenting workshop that he's been doing. So tomorrow we'll conclude it. What did y'all talk about yesterday? Yesterday was how to be a better digital parent. There you go, better digital parent. And so we're really looking forward to night 2. I'll be poking my head in and out as I get the opportunity. But just in case, again, this is your first time joining us for this, we're really glad you're here. We want this to be a service to you as a parent, parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, great-grandparent, anything. It does not matter. We want to help you out, give you some real tools. Chad's website is available. He'll mention that many times, where he has all of the information he's speaking about on there as well for you to kind of tune into and look at. It's just a great resource. So just some specifics again about Chad. He's a Huntsville native, graduated from Buckhorn High School in 2000, if I remember correctly. Was in the Marine Corps from 2000 to 2004, and then went to Freed-Hardeman University and has a degree in, it was Media Arts and Ministry. Double major? Double major. There we go. And Chad's up at Graymere, and I just thought of this last night. We'll have your preacher. He'll be up here in about 2 or 3 weeks speaking for our summer series, so he'll be up here as well. But we're really thankful. I'm going to say a prayer for Chad and for all of you, and then we'll hand it over to him. Let's pray. Father, we are grateful, so grateful for today, and specifically right now, I'm grateful for these parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone who's involved in raising these young people who are trying their best to not just raise them, but raise them for you. And I ask you to continue to give them the strength that they need, the energy that they need each day, the availability that they can really devote themselves to that task you've given us all of raising children. Father, help us to take that task oh so seriously, and we know they do. That's why they're here. I'm so thankful for that. Be with Chad. We're so thankful for his service and for his ministry and all that he does for the kingdom. Father, help us to just really tune into it and use what we hear, not just hear it, but to use it. Father, we're so thankful for your Son. Father, everything is possible through him. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Let's go ahead and get started this evening. We're going to be talking about what I've titled the social dilemma this evening. And this is one of those things, maybe I need to, there we go. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, appreciate it. It's one of those things that is hard to talk about. This is only the second time that I've given this presentation. I've rewritten this presentation all new for 2021. I figured it was time to rethink and talk about social media in a little bit of a different light. And I wanted to first ask, how many of you have seen the same titled Social Dilemma on Netflix? How many of you have watched it? Okay, not very many of you. That's okay. We're going to talk a lot about what was said. And if you haven't seen it, that's fine, but it is a great watch. You get to see the very creators of the networks that we use every single day talk about their creations and talk about those people have since left those companies, and now they're able to talk freely about those things. And so when we think about the social dilemma, and I apologize, as soon as Patty said it, I realized that I did not have the information with my email on these slides because I haven't done this presentation but once or twice. So that information with the slides and all that stuff is at my website, Chad Landman, ChadLandman.com, and you can just do /DPW, and you can find all of those presentations, the notes and everything. Download those, print those off. Those are not original. You don't have to pay for anything. I've taken all sorts of resources from different things. None of this stuff is original, and so distribute that as you see fit. Tell people about it. I don't, other than just, going around and speaking at places, I don't make any kind of money off of this. I just really want to try to help parents figure all this stuff out and navigate this stuff. And when we talk about navigating social media, boy, it's hard sometimes. There's going to be a lot more discussion in this class, and I want to hear from you tonight as we get into some of the things that we're going to talk about. The way I see it is that we have 3 problems when it comes to social media. And so much of our When I say social media, I mean apps like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, even to a certain extent YouTube, and private messaging services like WhatsApp, and all these services that we use and that are just ubiquitous. They're everywhere, and we use them every single day. I really tried to delete Facebook off my phone, and I found more times than not, I was trying to rush to a computer and talk to somebody about something on Messenger or doing things like that. It's too connected in our lives, and it's just too ingrained into who we are. But there's 3 problems that we face, I think, and these are the 3 problems, according to me, of course. Our own lack of knowledge about social media. You know, we always fear what we don't understand. Is that correct? I understand most of technology. Technology doesn't scare me, but technology may scare you because you don't understand it. And I want to say that you are in the same boat as a lot of different people. You know what I don't understand? Plumbing. I call a guy to my house. I do not understand how that stuff is. I could fix my sink in 6 hours, but there's a guy that comes to my house and he's got it done in 15 minutes. So again, it's the fear of the unknown, I think, is very powerful for us. Number 2 up there is social media's negative influence, not just on our kids, but our entire culture. The entire worldwide connectedness comes at a cost. That number 3 right there, we need to learn, and we're going to talk about the positives here about how to help our kids navigate this to become responsible digital citizens. So when we begin this tonight, I want to talk firstly about my son Jacob. Now I will tell you, he's the one in the foreground. The photo bomber one with the goggles on his head in the background is my 7-year-old. That is him exactly. Hey, let me get in the photo. I was trying to just get Jacob, and of course he pops up there and everything, so I had to leave it. But this is a 150-gallon stock tank that you can buy at Tractor Supply. And let me tell you, it makes a pretty good little swimming pool for little boys in the summertime. And he loves swimming. Jacob is my oldest child. He was born in 2011. He loves swimming. He's incredibly smart. He loves making videos. He even figured out how to do green screen videos on his iPad and using only his iPad. He loves jumping on his trampoline. He loves going to school, actually. He's one of the few kids that I know that really enjoys the structure of school. He is normal in every possible way, except that he's not. When he was about 2 years old, maybe about 1.5, somewhere between 1.5, 2 years old, my wife and I got that feeling from him, and we had only been parents for a short time. But as a parent, you know when something's wrong with your child, don't you? You know when they're sick or they're about to get sick. You know when they're dealing with something. You know when they won't talk to you, that something's wrong. And even at a very, very young age, we just knew that something was off with Jacob. And we had our worst kind of fears realized. We took him up to Vanderbilt in Nashville. A world-class psychologist looked at him, gave him a few quick tests, and it was not 15 minutes. She diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder. He's not very high functioning. He cannot carry on a conversation with you. He's gotten so much better and he's grown so much in the past just few years, actually. But I will never have a deep conversation about how does that make you feel? What is happening to you right? What are you thinking right now? He is not able to voice those things. Physically, he's perfect. Mentally, he's a cognitive delayed child. When my wife and I found this out, and we had barely been parents for 18 months at this point, we're just devastated. What do you do? What do we do? Do we even have more children? That was the first question in my mind is, what about the other children we want to have? And as a man, my first reaction was anger. Like, I want to fix it, right? That's the typical man reaction. My wife was right the opposite. Her reaction was sadness. And obviously, we dealt with that. They called it early intervention, what we had to deal with. And they said, and doctors and psychologists and behavioral specialists and ABA therapists and all this different stuff, Jacob has had an ABA therapist ever since he was 3 years old. He's going to turn 10 in October. The same ABA therapist has come to his house once a week for 7 years. She is phenomenal. And she has told us, along with all the other doctors and psychiatrists that we've talked to, one thing, that early intervention was the key in his success. He is doing fantastic now. He used to have a buddy in Bible class. Now he doesn't even have to have that. He has made incredible progress, but everybody has told us over and over again that it was early intervention that made that possible. The word that they also use is proactive. It was because we were proactive. It's because, frankly, as a man, I was not fighting my wife, but saying, honey, we don't need to get him checked out. He's going to grow out of this. It's a phase, whatever. But she knew. She was better than me. She knew something was wrong. And so when we think about it, we swallowed our pride, was able to get him the help that he needed, and now, because of that, at 2 years old, he's flourishing. Now, I tell that story because I want to illustrate the fact of being proactive. There's a lot of things in our lives that if we were proactive on, a lot of things would be better. If you had started saving earlier for retirement, it might be a little bit better for you right now, wouldn't it? If you had started a college fund for your child earlier, it would have been a little bit better. If you started thinking about digital parenting and started thinking about these things, not as just technology in kids' hands that you don't understand, but as something that you have to look at and that you have to manage and that you have to talk with your kids about, just like you would talk to them about anything else, then that's being proactive. So the key here is being proactive, not reactive. Because if we play the reactive game, we're going to be behind the 8 ball from the very beginning. We're going to be constantly playing catch up. So that's one of those things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about this evening. And when we think about that same title, the social dilemma, the dilemma that we have is that the technology that connects us also controls us. And I talked about the Netflix special, of course, and it looks like this. If you find it, you can search for it on Netflix. The language is not always, copacetic, so don't watch it with your kids. This is not a kid thing. This is an adult parent thing that you need to watch. But it is very, very eye-opening. For a long time, a lot of people told me, you need to watch this, you need to watch this. You do this digital parenting thing all the time, you need to watch it. And I was like, yeah, it's on my list. I watched it at the beginning of the pandemic last year. It almost changed everything I think about when it comes to teaching and talking this technology that connects us, social media. So when we think about these things, I have a question for you as we start off. What we have seen in the last few years has been kind of unprecedented. I hate to use that word. I know we used that word a million times last year in 2020. But as far as technology is concerned and social media is concerned, what we've seen as far as the pandemic, as far as political things, as far as all the misinformation and all the different things that we have seen, whatever side you fall on of that, doesn't matter. What we have seen has been completely unprecedented. So my question for you and for discussion is, what's wrong with social media? What do you think that Facebook and Twitter and all of these things can do better? What do you think that we can do as end users, talking to one another and conversing with one another, as Christians online, as Christians that our kids can see us talking on these social networks? What's wrong with it? What are some thoughts that you have on that? What are some things that you might say is wrong with Facebook or Twitter or YouTube? Give me some discussion here.
People without credentials to speak all this stuff can speak and gain popularity or gain.
Boy, that's ever true, is it not? Hey, for the live stream, he said, people without credentials can speak and be an expert on any topic. Isn't that true? That's dangerous. We used to only see those experts because the news crews would pull them in and they would know exactly these people to talk to, and they'd talk to these experts and stuff like that. But online, it seems like there's an expert with anywhere you look, with anything that you look at. That's an excellent point. Is that dangerous? And if so, why? What are some other things that's wrong with social media? Fill me in here.
As Christians, at times we're bullied.
Yes. As Christians, sometimes we're bullied because of our beliefs, because of what we stand up for, what we share, what we retweet. That's an interesting way of putting that, because Jesus himself was not comfortable in his ministry, was he? When he shared and when he went against the current, so to speak, and when he did what he did in his ministry, it was always controversial. Christianity, by definition, I've heard Andrew say this from the pulpit. He's our pulpit minister, but I've heard him say this over and over again. Christianity, by its nature, is divisive. And it is absolutely contrary to what the world wants us to be. And I also heard I was watching another presentation from another church the other day, and I heard somebody say that they were using the example of Romans 12, 1 and 2, about do not conform to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That idea of conforming is molding yourself in the shape of the world. The world is always trying to mold you with everything that they have. Is always trying to mold you in the shape of what they want you to be. And almost guaranteed, that shape is not what the Bible says. They're doing the same to your kids. The world is doing the same thing to you that it's doing to your kids. That's an excellent point. Give me one more. What's wrong with some of the things that we see? Selfishness. Me. They're not worried about the other person, as Christianity would teach us, as Jesus would teach us. They're worried about me, and my image, and what I have to say, and what's important to me. It's a good point. Somebody else had something? Yes, ma'am. We don't know what's truth and what's not the truth. Boy, that hits the nail on the head, does it not? Everything that we see on these social networks should be taken with a grain of salt. You know that Morgan Freeman has died 5 times on Facebook? That's funny. You laugh, but the man has been killed 4 or 5 times. And so when he really passes away, bless his heart, right? Everybody's just going to be, it's just another internet joke, just another Facebook joke, just another fake news, just another whatever. It's absolutely true. What can we trust? Are there things that we can look at on our screens that we can trust? I'm just asking because I don't know. The Bible app, there you go, right? The Bible app is just about the only wholesome thing that we have on our screens, is it not? We're going to talk about a lot of this. Thank you for your responses. We're going to kind of keep moving along. But I want you to be thinking about this question a lot, because there's a lot wrong with it. There's also a lot right with it, in the fact that it connects us, and the fact that all of these things are meant to, in some respect, give us a method of communication with one another. The technology is amazing. We just have to learn how to manage it and use it. A couple of things that we're going to talk about. This kind of bleeds into what we were just talking about. Is that true and not true and different things like that? Social media absolutely does not have your child's best interests at heart. Now, what do companies like Facebook and Google and Twitter, what do they prioritize? What is most important to them? Advertisers? Where do the advertisers come from? Let's go through this. Selling your data. Nail on the head, right there. We use Facebook, it's free, right? How many of you have heard the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch? Somebody's paying for that lunch, right? So here's the thing, with Facebook, we are paying for it with our data. I've got another phrase up here that I'm going to roll here in a second and let you think about it as well. Do not be deceived. How many times have we heard that in the Bible? Do not be deceived. You could put that in front of this phrase. Do not be deceived. Social media does not have your child's best interests at heart. It doesn't have your best interests at heart. They don't care about you. They don't care about your personality. They don't care about what you're going through. They don't care about your kids or their struggles. They don't care. What they care about is advertisers, your data, their bottom line. They care about making a positive growth impression to their shareholders. That's what they care about. Now, go ahead. They do. It absolutely does. How many people have you known in the past few years, just the past few years, who have been sucked into these conspiracy theories, who have been sucked into these ideologies that they have found in these groups on Facebook and online and all these different things? You probably know some people. And absolutely, the gentleman back here for the live stream said bad company corrupts good morals. That bad communication, the things that we see, who we're hanging out with online, just as well as you, just as well as your kids, is having a profound effect on their psyche. Remember, we are adults. Males by the age of 24 have a fully developed brain. Females by age 21, I believe. And so when we're all adults in here, we have those fully developed brains. Our children are still formulating their ideas of existence. They're still asking questions in their brains as well as we do sometimes too. Why do I exist? What's my purpose? All these other different things. And they're growing in their brains. I mean, if you've ever heard Lonnie Jones speak, he talks about how a teenager's brain is literally crazy. Their hormones are going crazy. You ever wonder why their emotions are all out of whack? And it's because their brain is growing at an exponential rate. And they're seeing the same things on these screens and learning the same things that we are, except it's affecting them in a much more profound way. So again, if we are able to teach them to discern, teach them and keep them away from those things, be those protectors as parents that we're supposed to be, do our job as protectors, it's going to keep them, it's not going to keep them sheltered. I'm not saying shelter your kids. I'm saying educate them. Okay? Tell me what this means right here. Anybody else have a comment? Okay. If you have a comment at any time, this is one of our discussion-heavy classes as well as tomorrow night as well. So just raise your hand. I'd love to hear from you. I said I was going to talk about this a little bit more tonight, and I will. This gentleman over here mentioned that these companies are selling our data. One thing that we need to, and I mentioned last night that kids, one thing we need to teach our kids is that kids, we need to understand that they are not necessarily, I know you have good kids, but they're not trying to do these, most kids at least, are not trying to get into trouble. They're not trying to do these nefarious things, and you have taught them pretty well probably. You've taught them all the things, places they should go, places they shouldn't go, and the apps that they can or can't download, and you've probably got their phone locked down, and all that's good. But at the same time, kids are most of the time not seeking out that trouble. They're just naive. Kids these days are incredibly naive. They just don't see the danger. They don't understand the danger of what is out there and what they can get into. And for that reason, I say privacy is an absolute illusion. There are kids that really believe, your kids too, probably, that there is completely safe ways to connect and communicate over Snapchat. Nobody sees those photos because they're deleted after a certain amount of time. All that stuff is super secure. If they say it's encrypted, I can trust it and all these other different things. It's not true at all. It's absolutely not true. Now, as adults, as discerning older adults who have been around the block a few times, we know that. But we have to make sure that our kids understand that as well. What was the thing back in the day? We told our kids, don't get in cars with strangers, right? Don't talk to strangers. If there's a white unmarked van that comes down your street and they're giving out candy, don't talk to them. Okay? And that's common sense, right? Well, it's common sense in the technology perspective to say, don't talk to people that you don't know. Don't subscribe to things that you know that you shouldn't. Don't follow people that have a negative influence. Do all those other different things. And this is why one of those things that you should be doing is looking at your child's accounts, looking at your child's social media activity, constantly kind of monitoring them and letting them know that you're monitoring them. It's very important that they know that as well. What do I mean by this? We've kind of touched on it already. With social media networks, especially Facebook and Twitter and all those ones that are absolutely free, what do I mean by you are the product, not the customer? What do I mean by that? Selling your information, just like the gentleman said, selling our data. Let's do a little exercise really quickly. How many of you think that you have liked at least 10 things on Facebook? 10 things. Okay? At 10 likes, Facebook has a limited, what they call psychographic profile of you. Meaning that they know your general likes, if you're male or female, they know about your age demographic, they know several different data points about you with just 10 likes. And that could be completely dissociative things. You could like a comment from somebody that they do something, or you could like this, I don't know, a group about trading cards or something like that, right? You could like totally dissociative things, and they can still have that limited profile of you. What about 50 likes? I know I've got more than 50. I've been on Facebook since 2004. In fact, I was the person who signed up Friedharbin University for Facebook. I regret the decision to this day. Remember when it used to be just colleges, right? So 50 likes. At 50 likes, they have a complete, what they call a complete psychographic profile of you. They know who you're voting for. They know your political leanings. They know who you support. They know who your friends and family are. They know all these other different things about you. All sorts, a laundry list of things. At 100 likes, and if you've been on Facebook for probably more than a year or two, everybody's got more than 100 likes, right? And this is just tapping these little comments and tapping them everywhere. With 100 likes, they can start to predict your behavior. Have you ever wondered and thought that maybe your lady in the tube and I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to set off everybody's on the live stream or anything like that, but the lady in the tube and the, hey, Alexa, and all that other stuff. You ever thought those things are recording what you say? They're not recording what you say. They're too smart for that. We've had devices in our pockets for 10 years that have been able to record video and audio of what we say every single moment of the day. So they don't even have to. What Facebook is doing through their app is they're creating what's called a social net. And they're connecting. They know that I have been in contact here I have logged onto the Wi-Fi at Owens Crossroads Church of Christ, and that I'm here, and that I've been at the Hampton Inn, logged at the Wi-Fi over there. They know that this gentleman right here likes this watch that he's got, and he's got a different watch band, and they know that I've been looking at that watch band, and he bought that and purchased that off of Amazon, and they just connect the dots, and suddenly that's how they throw up an ad for me that is very good. You ever been talking about something and an hour later an ad pops up on Facebook? They're not recording what you say. They're just using your proximity and all the different location data and so many other thousands of data points to say she might be looking for those really long pirate shoes or pirate boots. You know what I mean? You know those really long pirate boots, those things that were popular with ladies a couple of years ago? Okay, well, she's just saying, absolutely not. I don't do that. Okay. Just ruined my joke. Okay, that's fine. All right. No, I picked the wrong person. It's okay. Flip-flops. There we go. But they know you. At 100 likes, they know you almost better than your spouse does, and that's scary. You would be absolutely flabbergasted to know exactly how much data, how many data points they have on you. And that's just Facebook, y'all. I'm not even talking about Twitter, Instagram. I'm not even talking about all the others. TikTok is owned by the Chinese. And if you let your kids on that, who knows what they're doing with that data? It's like a spy network on Americans, American teenagers. So again, we have to make sure that we're looking at all these different things. Facebook and Twitter have 3 billion users combined. Now, I want to get to a little bit of a fun part because I know it's been really heavy. And I know it's been a lot to take in, but this is a little bit of fun that we can have, but also it's going to make a really good point, I think. So about 2 years ago, it was about 3 or 4 months before the pandemic, and I sat down a group of teenagers at Graymere, ages 13 to 18, and there was about 40 of them or so. And I asked them just what they thought. What was their first thoughts when they saw Facebook? This is teenagers now. What is your first thought when I say the word Facebook, or when I say the social network Facebook? What did they say? These are actual quotes from young men, young women, okay? This one says, oh, yeah, that's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. And sure enough, I know the boy, and sure enough, his father, that's exactly where he goes. And that was his first reaction, his first gut reaction. Oh, that's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. He goes to complain about everything, about how the roads in the city are not, this road's not being paved, or how this political candidate's doing this, or whatever like that. He goes to complain about everything. That's funny, but at the same time, it's very telling, is it not? Our children are watching us. Our children are watching everything that we do. It's where my mom tags me in photos that I don't want anyone to see. This was, again, 2 years ago. I read this and I wonder, are there going to be any, this is 2021, so the graduates that we have this year were born in 2003. How many of those graduates are going to have nothing but digital photos? You remember scanning physical photos into slideshows and things like that? Do they even do that anymore? I don't know. But you think about all the mountains of photos and the things like this. My wife has to deal with this on a regular basis because she has a mother that has binders of old photos. And every now and then she'll get a wild hair and she'll just start scanning them and just dumping them on Facebook. And I came in, no joke, I came in the other day. She is on the phone with her mom and going, no, Mom, you've got to delete that. I cannot have a picture of me being 4 years old in the bathtub on Facebook. You cannot do it. And it was just one of those things. It was hilarious. And so this just shows also the generation change as well. Sometimes we don't think anything is inappropriate, or sometimes we don't think something is not worthy of being put down or posted or whatever, and we need to think about those things. This one's funny. It's mainly for old people, like my mom and my dad, and my grandpa writes on it in all caps. Now, apologies to all the older people in the room, but what is all caps internet vernacular for? Yelling, right? Now, why would an older person write in all caps? Because they can see it better. There you go. And it's just so funny reading. So there's always that one Miss Sue or Miss Annette at church, right? She's 84 years old and she comments on every picture of your kids, right? And she's going to do it with all caps. Oh, so precious. Thank you for sharing, And it's kind of funny. And it just, just to show the disparity, the difference between that. So let's get a little bit, and I only picked out Facebook and Twitter of all the ones. Kids are really not using Facebook and Twitter very much. But they're the two biggest social networks in the world. Again, 3 billion users. Almost half the planet is on these two social networks. So what did kids say about Twitter? Twitter is going to give us a little bit of more of an idea of what kids are thinking about apps and services in general, and their general mentality as to how these things go. It's the social network my parents don't know how to use. Now, you can read between the lines there, right? And you can say, because they don't know how to use it, is that where they're going? How many of you as a teenager, and I don't care how old you are, how many of you as a teenager wanted to hang out with your parents on Friday night? No, absolutely not. You know where I hung out 14, 15 years old? At the Food Value parking lot in New Market, Alabama. because that's where my parents weren't. And when we think about where that is happening these days, what's happening in the digital space? Kids have replaced that. Where are the adults on the internet and on the apps these days? Where are they? Facebook. Can somebody tell me the average age of a Facebook user today? 45. So it's us. We're right there in the middle of that. It's actually ages 45 to 55 are the biggest demographic on Facebook today. 5 years ago, it was 35 to 45, so they're just kind of moving in on up, right? And so when we think about this, kids are going to naturally navigate and kind of circumnavigate, if you ask me, to where their parents are not going to be. They're going to want to have that independence. They're going to want to have those things. And guess what? One of your rules as a parent needs to be, whatever social network I allow you to be on, I have to follow you as well. Even if I don't know what Snapchat is or how to use it, I'm going to educate myself and I'm going to figure that out. And I'm going to watch you and we're going to be on it together. That needs to, at least in the beginning stages, that needs to be a policy of yours. I can't stand Snapchat. I can't stand Facebook. I can't stand hardly any of these social networks. But guess what? If I allow my boys, when they get old enough to be on those social networks, I'm going to have to be on it right there with them. And I'm going to have to educate myself on whatever's new here in 6 or 7 years when I allow them to do that. That's one of those things that we need to make sure that we keep in mind. I need to keep an eye on the time here. This goes into a little bit of a darker place, and we'll just kind of hit on these. This kid said it's basically the Wild West of the internet, and pretty much anything goes. The last comment here was, Twitter is where my parents can't keep up with me. This was back a couple of years ago. This kid in question his parents did not follow him on Twitter. The kid that made this comment actually got in quite a bit of trouble not too long after this, because his parents just weren't watching. They weren't playing the role of protector. They were trying to play the role of friend. We are not our children's friends. Grandparents, you're not your grandchildren's friends. You are their protectors along with the parents. We have to sometimes we need to be told that. So, what can we do? And this is the last one here. It's where I can say what I want to without being judged, and nobody knows who I really am. There's this big trend with kids about the anonymity aspect of nobody knows who I am, so I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I can be whoever I want. I can have this alternate identity, and then I can go and sit in church on Sunday morning, and I can go to Bible school, and I can go to class, and I can go to school on Monday and be on my ball team, and nobody's none the wiser. They shouldn't be allowed to have those things. There's even a name for it on Instagram. They call it Finstagrams, fake Instagrams. And kids with multiple Instagram accounts that they have to hide from parents, that they have to hide from things. And some of them, again, not using it for nefarious purposes, but you need to be aware of that as a parent. Any comments before we get to the next section here and kind of wrap up this evening? Anything stand out to you?
Just this past week about the last slide, I was reading about a kid who had gotten a college scholarship, and he either through social media he posted an ad in the name of the college, and so they went, since it was alerted to them, they went look at his page. Well, his scholarship got revoked for what he had commented previously on his social media, even though academically far and above he was welcome at their school, but based on his social life and what he put out there, he was rejected.
There's a school up in north of Nashville, Good Pasture Christian School. You might be familiar with it. There was a woman who was eminently qualified. She was the valedictorian of a class at David Lipscomb not too long ago. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago. She was the valedictorian of a class, and she graduated with honors, had all these other things far and above in education. She was a shoo-in to be hired, and that school did not hire her because of one questionable photo that she had on her Facebook. The big colleges, if your child wants to go to a big college, one of these moderate Ivy League schools, even some of the bigger schools like Ohio State or some of the other ones, I don't even know if University of Alabama does it or Auburn or anything like that, but some schools are very discerning in who they pick to come to their school. And they have teams of people that they have dubbed in some aspects, called them social excavators, to where if you apply to Harvard, you're going to get every bit of your social media turned inside out. If your kids have aspirations to go to some of these big institutions, they need to be aware that every choice that they're making online, it may be scrutinized. Some of it is unwarranted. Some of the stuff that people dig up from 7 years ago and then they fire, people for things and stuff like that. I don't know about how I feel about that necessarily. But your kids need to understand every decision that they make. That's a good point. Anything else jump out to you before we kind of move on? Absolutely. If you don't add information on Facebook, they're always asking you for it. Well, and they try, the one annoying thing to me is that if you download Facebook on your phone, they want you to download Messenger too. They annoy the mess out of you until you do it. And so I just do it. And we all just do it. And when something pops up and it says, will you allow this? Yes, allow. Don't do that. Always hit don't allow. Always default to no. Put on your parent glasses, so to speak, right? Put on your no frames and say no. You can always go back and enable those things later. But if you say don't allow, that limits how they can track you. That limits how they can track all these different things. Your child, again, another thing, a good point that you made me think about, was that your child, you should be turning off all sorts of the geolocated features and stuff that are on these apps, because Facebook wants to know where you're at, Twitter wants to know where you're logging in at. They should only be able to use the Maps and the Weather app for their location. And you can disable that in settings on an iPhone, and I know you can do it on a Google phone as well. We'll talk about a few of those things tomorrow night as well. But yeah, excellent point. They're always going to be asking for more information. No matter how much you give them, they're always going to be asking for more. Any other observations, comments? And I realize the same thing too. With my mom, and my dad, and the relationship that I have with them is different now because they were not my friends when I was growing up. They were my protectors. They were sometimes my disciplinarians. But oftentimes they were there to make sure that I was safe and growing up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
She would always say, oh, we're going spend the night with them. I don't know their parents. Well, they're good. I said, I don't know them. I don't know.
And that gets into a whole nother can of worms, especially when we talk about technology, allowing your kids to go over to somebody's house. The question now is not, do you have guns in the house necessarily? That should always be a question if you ask that. But now it's, hey, what kind of protections do you have on your Wi-Fi? What kind of filters do you have in your home for the internet? And what kind of restrictions do you have on your devices? Because I don't want my kids to get over to your house and see all sorts of stuff that they shouldn't see. That needs to be a discussion as well when kids want to stay over at another house. That's a good point. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
The original post is often misconstrued by others to a total different definition.
Now, wait a minute. She's saying that the original post is oftentimes misconstrued. Do you mean to tell me that people get angry and jump to conclusions on Facebook? Never. We're a whole lot braver behind our thumbs and little bitty keyboards. And I said it last night a little bit, but I'll say it again tonight. And sometimes we are so brave behind those little keyboards. We would never say those things sometimes to that person if we were standing right in front of them. That shouldn't be the case. We need to teach our kids the same principles apply on these devices as they do in real life. It's a very important point you made. Thank you. Let's move on with We got a couple more minutes left until the kids come back in. I want to hit up James chapter 3, verses 2 through 10. And we're not going to have time to read the whole passage, but I love the book of James. James is incredibly practical. And in this one, he talks about taming the tongue. And whenever he says tongue, I want you to think about him saying your mouth, your words, how you speak. And so much of what we do and how we speak is with our thumbs these days, is it not? So much of what we say is through text messaging and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all these other different interactions that we have. Now you think about our kids who live their lives on these devices. Every kind of communication that they have is through those types of things. So when James here says, he uses a couple different examples. He talks about if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. He talks about we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us. We guide their whole bodies as well. There's a bit in a horse's mouth is about that big, and it will guide the entire horse. 2,000-pound animal. It will guide that person with just a bit in its mouth. You think about this right here. He says, look at the ships also. Though they are so large, driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. This is a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. It is 1,092 feet long, 400 feet wide. It displaces 200,000 tons of water. It has between 120 and 150 various aircraft. It's powered by nuclear power, so it only has to refuel those plutonium rods every 20 years. These things are like floating cities. I was on 2 of them at one time in the Marine Corps for a couple of weeks at a time. You can't even tell. When you're on these things, you can't even tell. If you've ever been on one, you can't even tell that you're like on a ship. It feels like you're on land. They are enormous things. When we think about it, though, how big do you think the rudders are on these ships? You would think, oh, surely it's as big as this auditorium, right? It might be half as big as this section of seats right here. They're 20 feet by 32 feet. Now, granted, that's a big old rudder. But for a ship that big, for something that small to steer that entire ship, that's the point that Paul's trying to make here, is that our tongue, the words that we say, the words that we use, the words our children use, the language that they're using to talk to one another and communicate online and communicate on these apps, sometimes our thumbs that we use to communicate. They are like this ship. They're very big, and our bodies can be drawn and just moved by very small things. He goes on here and to give the example about a forest that's set ablaze by such a small fire. The Great Chicago Fire happened in the 19th century, and I think it destroyed something like 700 square miles and killed like 75 people. And it was started, myth says it was started by a cow kicking over a lantern in a barn. The Great Chicago Fire. I think that's pretty amazing. And the illustrations that Paul uses here to talk about how our words can have a tremendous impact. I don't know whoever coined the phrase and said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but what? Finish it for me. Words will never hurt me. I don't know who said that, but they were wrong. Words hurt. Words are incredibly powerful. We need to make sure that our kids understand those things. So, a couple of last-minute things here. And I want to hear from you. I want to take your questions here. How do we control our text so that it doesn't control us? These are some practical things that you can learn, some practical things that you can then pass on to your kids. And again, this presentation, if you're not fast enough to take the notes, then this is available at my website as well, and we'll share that here tomorrow night as well. How do we do that? I love what Cal Newport said in the book Digital Minimalism. He said, simply put, humans aren't wired to be constantly wired. We're not. Your kids are not wired to be constantly wired all the time. We have to take breaks from these screens. We have to do things without these screens in front of our faces sometimes. The first thing that I think you can do is set boundaries. I'm not perfect, and I look at my phone too much, and I watch too many YouTube videos, and I watch too much Netflix, and I do all that kind of stuff. So I'm right there with you. But I do have one boundary that I'm very proud of that I set when I go home. I have an Apple Watch. I take that watch off. I put it on the charger when I get home. I take my phone off. I put it on the charger, and it goes on Do Not Disturb at 5 p.m. And from at least 5 p.m. to 7:30, that is a time where I just do not look at any kind of technology. If the TV's on and the boys are watching it, yeah, that's fine and stuff like that. But most of the time, that's dinner time. That is a boundary as a family that we have set, my wife and I have set, where there's no iPads, there's no computers, there's no devices. My wife puts up her device, and most of the time, it's okay. That's a boundary that we've set. What kind of boundaries have you set in your home? Have you set any boundaries that you would like to tell me about tonight? Some ideas that I can maybe pass on to others? What are some things that you have set on in your home? Anybody? No devices at the dinner table. Okay? I think that's a good way to start. Hey, just leave your phone upstairs. Leave your phone in this basket in the living room. And they're going to hear it, like if you give it within earshot, they're going to hear it little tinkle and buzz and things like that. And they're, Mom, I got to check it. No, you don't. 30 minutes for dinner, you just need to sit here with us and talk. Remember talking? We used to do that sometimes, right? That's a good thing. What else? Any other ideas? You don't know, you got an idea, but you don't know how to do it. Okay, hit me. Now, that's really interesting that you would say that, because I'm going to teach you how to do just that tomorrow evening. He said, after a certain hour in the evening, you just cut the internet off. You don't think you can do that? You can do it. You do, okay. So what's the reaction there? You cut off your boys' internet access. What's the reaction most times, or what does it work for you? Okay. Well, my boys have, so you know the term in the Bible, weeping and gnashing of teeth? That's kind of what happens, you know, the ripping of the robes and things like that. You know, the one, oh, the internet's off. And I'm like, just go get in the bathtub. Come on. It's not a big deal. But see, that is so powerful because you are in control. And you say when they can use that, you act as that gatekeeper there to say that, oh, Mom and Dad are in control. That's a very good early precedent to set. Now, how specifically, technically do you do that? Okay. Eero is my favorite. E-E-R-O. I'm going to talk at length about those devices tomorrow evening. They're readily available at Sam's Club and Walmart. I think even Target these days. They come in packs of 1, packs of 2, packs of 3. You can get them. We're going to talk all about that tomorrow night. So I'm really good to hear you that. But you can get on your phone and just one tap, boom, internet's off. It's kind of great to have that power. So anyway, that's some boundaries that we can set. What are some other things that we can do? Of course, you've heard of screen time on an iPhone. How many have iPhone users in here? Okay, and Android? Okay. There's always the Android guys in the back are like, yeah, loud and proud, baby. That's okay. That's all right. And most of the stuff that we have, in fact, every single thing that I will mention, if it doesn't have a counterpart, the apps and services that I mentioned are all available on both platforms. So I'm never going to give you one that works on iPhone and does not work on the other, okay? So screen time on iOS, which is Apple devices. Digital Wellbeing is an app on Android that you can use. And again, sometimes they change the names of those things, so that might have been changed already. But if you enable screen time, it's really sobering to see that report after a week. And when you look at how much time you have spent on a certain app or watching a certain, doing a certain thing, it's really sobering. And can you guess when what they choose to deliver that report to you every week? Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Right as you're sitting down to church, about to try to get in the right frame with God, and oh man, I looked at my phone way too much this week. Sorry about that, Lord. And so we got to think about those things. So use these apps, and really you can use screen time to actually turn off different apps and services on your child's device. We'll talk about that in depth tomorrow evening. This is a really fun one that learned from a friend that he did, and I do this every time I want to pay less attention to my phone, like on a family vacation. But this is use black and white grayscale mode on your iPhone. And of course, Android has a compatible way that they do it as well. But I think it's really interesting. You know, if you go to, and I'm not saying that you should go to Vegas and spend money in Vegas, but in Vegas, what's the most popular thing that people want to do? Right? The slot machines, right? And are those slot machines really bland and have gray colors and things like that? Absolutely they don't, right? They have bells and whistles and lights and colors and animations and video screens and all sorts of crazy stuff now, right? Well, your iPhone and some of these apps are specifically designed to hook you and to keep you coming back and to keep you doing the never-ending scroll, right? And so to kind of alleviate that, if you take color out of the equation, you would be surprised at how your mind reacts to that. So again, if you want to limit, if you want to turn that on in the evenings, perhaps, might be a neat experiment to take on. Have no color on your phone. I did this with some kids. I challenged them to do this, and they had this terrified look on their face. I said, it's not going to stay that way, right? And then they said, no, we're not worried about that. What if we try to take a picture? And I was like, if you try to take a picture, it's going to be normal. It's going to be in color. It's not going to be in black and white. So they were terrified about it, okay? But it's going to take normal pictures, of course. Okay, let's keep moving on. We've only got just a couple of minutes. I haven't seen people back there telling me whether or not I've got 5 minutes or not, so I'm going to keep going until I'm told otherwise. Notifications. Did you know that you can turn them off? Because you can. I see people all the time, their phones just buzzing, binging, dinging, and all this other stuff, and I'm just like, you can turn all that off, right? You can turn off everything. In fact, can you guess the only app that I do have notifications on for? Can you guess? Anybody? What? No, not the weather. Not email. Oh, no, not email. Don't say that. That's bad. What did somebody say back here? No, not Life 360. My kids aren't old enough for that yet. Come on. No. Text messages. That's the only thing I got them turned on for. It's the only thing that really makes sense for me. I don't need the dinging and message. Every time that says, can we send you notifications? Don't allow. I don't even think about it anymore. Don't allow. I just hit it. And when I go down notifications, I just hit them off. If kids can't hear their phone buzzing in their backpack at school, they're going to be less, he's giving me 5 minutes. Okay, good. If you can't hear your phone buzzing, you're less likely to go pick it up. Oh, I wonder what that was. Because how many times have you picked up your phone to answer a message, but then got caught up in doing something else for 20 minutes on your phone? It's how they're designed. So again, turn off those notifications. You can, again, put one of those fences in place and limit that. Delete the apps that you're using too much. When you use screen time or digital well-being and you see after 7 days the app that you have used the most, here's my challenge for you. Just for 1 week, take that app and delete it. Now, I told that to a bunch of kids and they got the terrified looks on their faces again. And I said, you can put it back on there. But again, as a challenge, see how differently you use your device without the app that you use 60% of the time on your screen. It'd be an interesting experiment for you, I think. Challenge your kids with that experiment as well. Offer them, I don't care, offer them a prize or something, and I'll buy you, a $20 gift card to McDonald's or something like that, just whatever. And say, if you can go 7 days without this, let's do it. It might be a neat family exercise, and it will allow you to have just another talking point to say, this is how much these things are controlling us. Do you see that now? We need to be cognizant and aware of that. I like this one a lot. Find opportunities to leave your screen behind. If you're going on a hike, going on a walk, going out to go get ice cream, just leave your phones at home. If everybody's there, then you don't need your phone. You don't need your phones. Just leave your phones at home. Now, that's not going to be popular with your kids. They're going to want to have those things in their hands at all times, right? but just encourage them. Hey, we're leaving all our phones at home. Your kid does not need their phone at soccer practice necessarily. They don't need these different things. If you have younger kids, like I said last night, there's a lot of devices that are walkie-talkie-like devices. You do not have to buy them an iPhone. So, again, find opportunities to leave your screen behind. I think I'm getting to the end here. Oh, yeah. This is the last one here. Submit to God. That's kind of the key and the centerpiece here. Submit to God, not some kind of false identity or ideology. Kids are finding their identities online. If you don't talk to your kids, they're going to find somebody to talk to. If you don't listen to your kids, they're going to find somebody who's going to listen to them. It's all the more important. I think about my little boys, and when my little David comes up and he's telling me about this thing that he saw at school, and his friend did this, and you know, it doesn't make a lick of sense to me, but I'm going to sit there and just listen as much as I can. Say, oh, that really? Tell me more about that. And he'll just talk. We need to establish those things at an early age, and if we do that, then that's just a parenting concept. They're going to start listening to us when we start talking about all this technology and stuff too. And they're going to be smart enough, going to be informed enough by you to not do things that they shouldn't, to not go in directions that they should. Okay. Any questions, comments as we kind of end? Noah, are we ready to completely wrap it up? We are? Okay. They're waiting on us. So we'll go ahead and adjourn. Remember, I'm available for questions after this. I'm available for questions at my email address, chad@graymere.com. If you have any questions for tomorrow night, remember, bring your devices tomorrow night, any device that you have in question. If you have any Kindle Fire tablets, we're going to be talking about those tomorrow as well. We're going to talk about Android devices, iOS, Apple devices, and as well as Kindle Fire devices as well. So I hope you'll be here tomorrow night. We'll be ready to dive in. I'll need every minute tomorrow night to get through all the stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay, thank you very, very much. I appreciate